Welcome back, boys. Today we have one from Whatifalthist. Why empathy is the meaning of life. Man, this dude, we checked this guy out before. This dude is like wicked smart. People clown on him, say, yeah, he's crazy. Oh, he's crazy. You know, I want my smart people crazy. That means they're genius. And man, this guy definitely has a lot to say, and we need to hear him out at least, and then disagree if we do later. But let's just hear this man out. This guy.
3 years ago, I predicted that the right would have an ugly and horrible backlash to wokeness. I turned out to be totally correct, and whenever I go online, I find someone saying something demonstratively evil and cruel to others under the guise of revenge against the left. It's everywhere and frankly makes going online very difficult, so I try to avoid it as much as possible. I basically don't use the internet anymore except for business purposes or listening to music. I was also correct in predicting that this reaction would go too far, and that people would be incapable of actually sustaining the trauma they received from wokeness without pushing back in an unreasonable way. The thing is that I can see each trajectory here, and I can understand why everyone involved feels this way. I also lived under the woke tyranny for years, and it fills me with enormous rage, where we do need to beat the left to survive as a civilization. However, I can also see the big picture, where I know where this is going to go, and I know that it's just not going to work in advance. I love the right and I want it to succeed, so I'm going to give it constructive criticism when needed so that we actually win. We're currently seeing human minds get crushed by historic events far greater than them, which their individuality is consumed by. The idea that human nature is rational by itself makes rationalizing very easy in this society. We have zero methods to discern rationalization from rationality in our culture, which means we just say shit and believe it. This is most obvious for the left, where for an external viewer, or 99% of the human condition, it's obvious that the left is totally incorrect and mentally ill.
Yeah, they're wrong on so many things. But look at this picture, man. Eat the rich. And like all these people, man, like they I don't know, they have so little going on in their lives. They care so much about these movements, about politics, about things. And the thing is, truthfully, all these women should have really had like 10 babies to take care of, right? You know what I mean? Like they in a better world, they wouldn't be holding these signs, going on protests and going on parades and pride parades or whatever the hell they're doing. They would have 10 kids that they would be their man and their children. But reality is brutal.
It's obvious that the left is totally incorrect and mentally ill.
Yes.
A man is not a woman, and killing the rich, who are often the ones that produce things, won't bring about utopia. However,
yeah, people have like this kind of dumb idea that the rich are like you, like they're the peasants, like you can just beat them around, you can tax them to death, you can you can eat them, you know, you can eat all their money, you can tax them. But the thing is, they are not like you. They have options. They can, if a country treats them too bad, they can just move to another country. They have that freedom. They're not stuck like you are. So they can just switch country. So if they get taxed too much, they'll just, whoops, now they're in Dubai. Whoops, now they're in in the UAE, like Dubai, or other places that have lower taxes. I see a lot of people go to like Malta or something. I don't know. But yeah, the thing is, these people also create opportunities. The rich people create opportunities through work, through jobs. They create businesses, they become rich. And in doing so, they have employees. And, you know, who are the employees? It is the people. The people get jobs from the rich people so that they can make money and hopefully, I mean, to get money, to gain wealth, and then start a family, own something. Now it's getting more and more difficult.
For the left takes often the ones that produce things won't bring about utopia. However, the left takes everything they say completely seriously, and most are utterly incapable of leaving their own.
I've said it before, and I'll just say it again. I do believe that an incredible amount of people on the left, they didn't develop properly as humans. Like social skills, they're low-key, or high-key, I should say. They're not low-key, they are just obviously on some kind of spectrum, right? And I think a lot of them, they fall into this category of like, they're mentally ill, but they're not enough mentally ill. Does that make sense? They're still like cognitive, and they're still like normal-ish on looking on the outside. But you meet a lot of them, and it's like they tweak out sometimes, right? They do tweak out sometimes. You probably noticed it as well. And yeah, and also like they're not very moral people. They don't believe in God, and they don't believe in God. They yeah, you see it all with the kind of Charlie Kirk situation that went on, people cheering on his death. But yeah, you just have to watch your back, you know. You can't really trust these people, because next they're laughing at you when you die. So yeah.
Paradigm. For those who watched my Mouse Utopia video about the series of experiments in the 1960s where you gave mice perfect living conditions, and then each time they turn on each other, their social structure utterly collapses and their birth rate crashes to 0, where the mouse colony dies. They ran this experiment over 30 times. When I kept looking at this, I always had a thought in the back of my head, which I know isn't really reasonable, for why the mice couldn't make the decision to avoid this. And I know they have small heads, but it still feels that way. But now we're living through human mouse utopia, and even with our larger brains, I can understand how difficult it is. Avoiding human mouse utopia first requires the rational ability to understand what's going on, which from the recent studies by the dominant thinker in this field, John Haidt, only about 10% of the population can really do. On top of that, it requires enormous...
Yeah, you kind of... There's so many reasons to why, but for many, it's what I see that blocks most people's vision is pride, or like arrogance. They think they know it all, so they stop learning. But that is not exactly a thing a smart person does now, is it? If you're actually intelligent, you're open to all knowledge all the time, no matter who it is from. You don't just like learn something and then boom, now you learned it forever. Like I've met people like this. I'm sure you have met people like this as well. I've worked with people like this. You try to teach them something they don't know, and they just don't listen. And it's like, okay, then stay ignorant forever, I guess. Like, it's not like these people kind of do it to themselves. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't surprise me when I hear 10% of people can there's only 10% of people who can see holistically what is going on. It really doesn't surprise me.
Force of will population can really do. On top of that, it requires enormous force of will to overrule your own animal biological urges while also creating group formations of other humans who agree with you. I can understand why surviving mouse utopia would be hard as we live through it. What I'm saying here is that it's very easy to look at other eras of history and call them stupid for being stuck in their own retarded crowd psychology events, like the Salem witch trials, Mao's Great Leap Forward, or Caligula's reign, but it's vastly more difficult to realize it yourself and adjust. People are rationalizers who put their own self-interest first and foremost. A terrible part of this is they're often stupid rationalizers who don't know what they want in the long term or how to get their results, not thinking beyond their nose. What you're looking at with the great political events today, which are driving people crazy, is that you could
Yeah, it's a lot of people, like for me, the immediate thing I was thinking when he said that, I thought about like short attention spans. Everybody's on TikTok, everybody's on these short form content on Instagram, on X, on all these platforms, and they have such low attention spans that also, like, a lot of people are so emotional now. Like we have a very feminized culture. What that does is people only care about feelings here and now. They only care about feelings here and now. So when for example, immigration comes up, oh no, it feels good to let all these people in and help them, help them. But they don't see the consequences that will happen of higher crime, civil unrest, you always having to look over your shoulder in public or on a train or on a bus, and kind of like that culture and community is eroding, partly because of immigration. So people they have like this like feelings first thing where they only care about here and now, satisfying the urge here and now, feeling here and now. They don't think about the consequences of their actions, basically their will, their choices, and what it will bring. They don't see what steps are gonna happen in the future. Which, if you just think about it a little, it will. You will start to see it if you are open to it, that is.
Understand on analytical events today, which are driving people crazy, is that you could understand on an intellectual macro basis how this broader group trend is affecting them, but then it's much more difficult to control your actual actions as an individual, which are motivated by their animal nature. I don't fault humans for this. Well, I actually do, but I try to be nice about it, since our animal nature is the main thing that we are, with reason being a strange extra device we can use under certain contexts. So it's not unreasonable to think that we'd be animals, since that's just what we are. In the same manner that I predicted the left would go absolutely crazy, try to kill the West, and self-destruct 5 years ago, I also predicted a resentful right would emerge, which would go too far. I also predicted that the birth rate would keep collapsing, the NEETs and 4Bs would emerge, while the West would be slammed by an event which I call the psychological Black Death, which would make it nigh impossible for humans to cooperate at all. Although I am frequently wrong, I am also sometimes correct with my predictions. The reason I was able to do these things is I just listened to what different groups in the population said, I compared their words to their actions, and then I projected it out into the future. Understanding the world gets profoundly easier if you just listen to people. This is the purpose of this video.
Yeah, you should kind of just listen to what they say. The left has been for years saying that they, hate us all. They hate white men. They hate men. They hate society. They hate the world. They wanna, they hate all these things, and you should kind of just take it for what it is. They're just hateful people. They just hate it all. And if you just think about it, like, these people should not have power, right? They should just not have power. They're children. And they will cause death, they will cause misery and pain for yourself, for your family, for your friends, for children, for women, for everybody. These people hold power. So now how do you fix it? I mean, you take it away, right? But it's easier said than done, right? Need something in place, like voting, who should be allowed to vote. Maybe people who have stake in the world, right? In the nation. But who has that? Or how do you get like the right to vote. Now you just get old, you get what, 18 years old, you just pass some number and then boom, you're allowed to vote. I think it is a little too easy. I think it should not be a right but a privilege to vote and be able to change your country. But the strong should be able to dictate that. In order to let only the strong people vote, then you need some kind of military service or civil service in place to make sure you earn the right to vote, and you aren't just, you know, it shouldn't be possible that you're mentally ill or you're a nihilist or whatever, get old enough and then you're allowed to vote. I don't think that is how it should work. You should be able to, through some kind of test or something, for community, for your neighbors, for the nation, prove to them that you should in fact have the right to vote. So through military service or civil service, that would be cool. Like, imagine if that system was in place. That would mean idiots who are cowards, or cowards and weak people wouldn't be allowed to vote. So society would look better. It would mean more people who have strength and maybe a little more at stake would make decisions on voting and, you know, who's in power, how society should be ran, the culture. I think that would be much more healthy for a nation.
To talk about something which I think people really need to hear, but don't know how and don't really want to know how. That being how to step outside of your own emotions, gain enough self-awareness that you're not utterly controlled by your own animal impulses, and then how to understand how others feel. This skill, if you know how to use it correctly, is an...
Yeah, that's I want him to tell the people. But I have a few ideas on my own, but I've talked too much already.
incredible superpower, something where it's insanely shocking that we don't teach people. This video will talk about why empathy is the most important thing, why empathy doesn't actually mean what people think it does, and how it often is the exact opposite. And empathy is actually a profoundly masculine trait, one that can be used to crush your enemies. I think empathy has received a very bad name in the current right-wing culture, and I'd like to change that. All over. Vampire. Part 1. Emotions really matter. Politics today is highly and in fact entirely vibe-based. If you say something, you'll almost never receive the actual answer to the question you said, but rather the emotional gut-level response they felt from it. We never talk about actual things with fact-checking what people are saying, but rather fourth-degree abstracted caricatures of topics which bear practically no relation to reality. In so many topics, I find the Republican and Democrat narratives are just utterly wrong, but no one actually checked if it's true. Our entire discourse is propelled by the internet, which is powered off hysteria in the same manner a car is powered off gas. The problem here is that people have zero self-awareness about this and are in fact entirely powered off emotion. The problem though is that in our culture, you're not allowed to question others or say you're better, and this means that people just have utterly insane opinions, entirely motivated by emotion, which they treat with utter certainty, but are never checked. Getting answers right is very difficult in that when you're thinking a complex thought, you have to check every single subtopic to see that the equation you added together is actually right. People create a string of rationalizations which others don't disprove. Then, since they believe they are innately rational, they can force themselves to believe the most insane things. This is the closed loop which is so dangerous that I talk about here. The internet also makes this entire dynamic worse, where people get stuck in these loops of verifying their worst fantasies, which the internet keeps feeding them because it means they spend more time in front of a screen. The other thing is that people try to use rationality for things where it doesn't work. Rationality is not an all-consuming code which should be used for everything in human life. That was just...
Yeah, it's there's some things that you I hear what he's saying. Like there's certain things that you can't use rationality for everything. You know, you can't fix everything with a punch. You can't fix everything with fire. You can't fix everything with water. Certain things require certain different things, right? And it's a very extreme people have this autistic idea that you can just find some special thing and use it for everything. For example, science or anything else for that matter, that you can just find let's just say science. You can use science for everything. No, there's certain things science cannot do, and people just refuse to accept it. Like people still defend science. I get it. It has done a lot of good, but look at society. Look at our people. They're sick. They have mental illness, and science can't science them out of this. They have a spirit problem. They have a soul problem, and science cannot give them that. Those answers they seek only through God and spirit, they can find the answers. But it's seen as a joke nowadays. People aren't taught this in school. They learn nowhere about this, and they just continue to become more and more miserable. And that is the kind of part of that psychological Black Death he was talking about, which I agree on.
An idea posited code which should be used for everything in human life. That was just an idea posited by the Enlightenment which no one really thought through. Keep in mind the human mind is complex and it has lots of different mechanisms which it evolved for attaining different goals. The way people think is that if they add as many as if clauses, or as if the world is rational, as if progress is real and naturally occurs, or as if we're all equal, and they seem to think that if they add more of these as if clauses, then they're just smarter. But in reality, they're removing themselves from basal reality with each extrapolation. Things can just be true, and you should just accept true things. If you are correct, nothing else matters. Congratulations. For example, courage and strength are necessary for many things in life, distinct from reason. People have crippling anxiety since they're trying to engage their rational mind, or in reality, their rationalization, for something it's just not designed for. You need the ability to tell your own mind to shut up. The way to do that is through strength and courage, as well as mindfulness, but that's a different story, and you cultivate strength and courage through their own right, not as faculties of reason. Overthinking is a sign of weakness. It means you know what the correct answer is, but you're too weak to accept it. Alternately, since we think human nature is rational, then people feel bad for being human. However, that's what they always were. For example, people are shocked when they have emotions, when women act like women, when Asians act like Asians, which is awfully strange, because shouldn't people act like whatever type of person they are? Given people think they are rational, they tend to take it very poorly when you say that they're emotional, but that's unreasonable, since humans are always emotional, from studies and just from basic wisdom. And we found from those things that emotions make up 90% of human cognition. People have staggeringly poor emotional awareness, which is very dangerous, since I think emotional awareness is a more important skill than reason for most people. That's since most people aren't smart enough for their reasoning abilities to really matter. Most people just work a fairly boring and monotonous job, have a moral value code to interact with others, and a mate. That means there's not that much legitimately rational thinking that needs to go on. However, literally everyone needs emotional intelligence, since we all have to have human relationships. From the studies on these topics, the most important thing...
Yeah, this is... we're going into... these are the types of topics which, these kind of autistic dudes don't get. Autists don't understand that this does matter. It matters a lot, actually. And try to science your way into this, man, but you just can't. It is extremely important, I've noticed, to be able to speak to people, especially women, be able to, just be normal around them. They tend to appreciate that, and then you can get a mate. I've met people who don't understand irony or sarcasm. Like you try to banter with them, you try to joke with them, and they don't understand it. And that's when I met people like these. When I meet people like this in real life, it really it makes sense why I see some people comment the things they comment, or believe the things they believe, is they just genuinely just lack some mental abilities that I and others have, but they don't. And they don't get it. They're driving a bicycle while I'm in a Bugatti, basically, mentally. Like this is just like an example, right? But when I see people like that, I look at their lives, right? They talk and I listen, and their lives are pretty boring and mundane and sad. I met people who can't keep a woman because they're too autistic, and I know exactly why. They're too autistic. They can't make a woman feel safe, so they'll never have a woman. Some of these men have to pay to get some, if you know what I mean. Legitimately, they told me this, and it's incredible to me how people don't value this. They think like, oh, emotional intelligence, like what is that? Like they don't care about that. But that is what forms friendship. That is what gives bonds. That is what makes women love you or care about you. That is, or else you're just gonna be tricked. I mean, it's very important to know this, to know all of this.
To people's happiness is good relationships, which means that if people know how to fix their relationships, that will radically increase their happiness. Keep in mind that for almost all of human history, religion was the most important thing in society, while reason has been incredibly rare over history since they understood this principle. They knew that for most people, maintaining emotional self-awareness and the ability to interface with others in a mature way was the most important thing. This is what religion does really well, which is why every society in history made sure to inculcate religious values across the entire society so that they could trust that people in said given society could control themselves as individuals, as well as their interactions with others. Our society doesn't really think about human relationships or view them with any respect, which is stupid even in pure game theory terms.
Yeah, I mean, it makes completely sense what he's talking about, because nowadays, I mean, you've all seen the numbers. Nobody has friends. Virginity rate, like dudes are not having sex. Everything is collapsing. Mentorship is collapsing. Fatherhood is collapsing. Like people are just splintering apart mentally, in politics and physically. Like people are just not together. There is no communities. There is no, coming together and just sharing food and talking. It's crazy. And people think we live in some kind of like, we have a functioning society. Everything is fine and dandy. Everything is cool. No, the people are suffering. And it's time for the non-autistic to kind of explain why things don't work the way they should work, right? You want people to be happy, to have relationships. But there's also an economic aspect to this as well. People are just poor, and poor people are not usually happy. People who have nothing, I should say, they're not usually the most fun to be around. Usually, people who have things going on, they don't worry much. They aren't very envious. They aren't very prideful. they're usually like better people to hang around with than poor people, that is.
Where humans have to interface with others. We have these sort of fantasies of the singular individual totally removed from culture, context, community, and other humans. This is a descendant from Rousseau's state of nature, which anthropologists have totally disproven. This is completely insane, given the person in the state of nature, totally removed from all context, has never ever existed, while humans for all of history have been totally reliant on their community, context, and other people around them. That's more true today than it's been for most of history, in which, in previous societies, people tended to only rely on others in their village, while in huge industrial civilizations, the scale of reliance is enormous and global. In our society, there are zero methods to regulate either how people are supposed to process their own emotions or how to deal with others. I guess therapy kind of performs that role, but therapy has universally failed at fixing the mental health crisis, in that the amount of therapists have skyrocketed at the exact same time as increases in mental health issues. Furthermore, therapy isn't even designed to fix people psychologically. This depends on context, where EMDR trauma therapy, which is highly specific, has saved my life, but that's not 95% of therapy that people do. Therapy as it's understood today is built to feed into women's cognitive biases, where women tend to like just being heard in conversations without you giving solutions immediately. Which I get, since that's the way I am too. That's partly since 80% of Freud's clients were women, and they reported positively at his style of therapy. However, if you look at the scientific track record, normal therapy doesn't fix people, even women, and there's literally no framework to integrate or understand human psychology on a broader level. I've read like 50 psychology.
Yeah, I mean, it's very like sad. I mean, I don't know much about the topic. I mean, just look at the books he's read. I don't know much about a topic, but just thinking about it, like you pay money to somebody to listen to your problems, and they don't really teach you the important things. They don't set things into perspective. They just kind of make you cope. Just a massive cope. You should kind of just work at like the most ultimate brutal level. You should kind of just accept the suffering as love. Like, just love yourself in the suffering and get better. But most people don't want to do that. They just want to cry for a moment and feel sorry for themselves, and then maybe try to pick themselves up. But you should kind of just enjoy the suffering and grow.
Books in my life, and really only the Jungians, trauma therapy a little bit, or evolutionary psychology actually have.
I had like I made like a joke to people before. I said that people who have like social anxiety, they are narcissists, or like they think too highly of themselves. I said this when I was like, this was like 2-3 years ago. Like I was like younger. Like people around me, they were like, "What are you talking about?" And it's like, bro, I told to them straight up. It's like, bro, nobody cares about you. You are a nobody. Stop thinking so highly of yourself. And people just didn't understand what I was talking about. But I think that sentiment is starting to like kind of resonate now. Like people need to understand that you're not the king in your fantasy world, that you are the main character. Nobody cares about you. Nobody cares that you walk awkwardly, or you can't speak right, or you stumble or whatever. Nobody cares. Just get better. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, go speak to that woman. Go speak to that man. Do what you want. Nobody cares. Like, bro, you gotta, you have to game the kind of society that we're living in now. You're not really held accountable. Like, the thing is, I'm not held accountable, but what I mean is, you can kind of be whoever you want every day. You can be a different person. Right? You can have one personality this day and the next personality this day, kind of. You can kind of practice on people, on random people. Go in a coffee shop and just be extroverted. Go in a different coffee shop and be a little bit more cool, a little bit more mysterious. You can do that. if you're skilled enough, that is, but you need to practice. That's why, you know, don't have too much pride. Don't have too much, you know, that narcissism. Like, you're a nobody, so build who you want to be. Like, you have no, you're limitless. Like, you can build what you want. Like, nothing is holding you back. But like thought, like mindset. If you have the correct mindset, you can do a lot. But there are certain realities you have to accept. Yeah.
Structures on how to understand how to heal humans or how psychology fits into the broader human condition. It's pretty insane that there's an entire institution called therapy which exists to heal people, but it doesn't. What normal therapy almost always ignores on top of this is that for all of human history, therapy was called religion, but for some reason that doesn't work for modern populations. What the complete inability to introspect on our own emotions and psychology.
Yeah, it's like people go to therapy because I mean, okay, let's just make something up. Or not make something up. Like an example, people go to therapy because they have some problem in their life, like things aren't going as they're supposed to be going, and I don't know why. I just feel this dread or depression or whatever. Like, life isn't all good. I need some help to get a better life forward. So you go to therapy. The thing is, we've lost a lot in society. People have no idea. Me, especially, like, I have no idea. Where I read about it, I heard about it, but I never experienced it. But you know, we have lost religion. We have lost, you know, community, kind of duty. Like, men have become more like a women. Women have become more like men. Like, when is the last time you saw like a sweet feminine woman smiling at you? You know, like, it sounds like a stupid example, but it's very real. Like, things have gotten a lot worse in so many ways in society. So of course people need therapy because there's no religion anymore. So they go to therapy. Therapy can't do its job when actually the world has just gotten shittier. The people have gotten shittier. They have become more greedy. They indulge more in their vices. They just become, you know, less, how do you say it, like, moral. Yeah, I mean, yes, less moral. Like, you look at people now and they're kind of becoming more and more like savages, you know. They weren't civilized properly. They weren't socialized properly. That's why all these people are so autistic and so weird to be around. Like, some of these people are just twitchy and just ready for violence, and they have weird political opinions and thoughts about like how human nature works and how reality works and how everything is connected and fits together. Like, they have like this twisted abomination when it comes to their like worldview, which I find disgusting. But
has done is to create an intensely immature population. People are complete strangers to themselves and are in utter denial about who they really are. It's so funny to watch in that people will clearly perceive themselves in the opposite lens to how everyone else perceives them. At the same time, you can't blame them too much since society offers them no tools on how to do this. In fact, it's likely that whenever they tried to or learn these skills, they've only faced attacks from society. Our real religion as a culture or our operating system is conformity, denial, and immaturity. Anyone who pushes back against these gets discriminated against by society. The reason for this is that we are an evil and twisted society. Any degree of introspection would break most people, and they'd realize how evil others are. Another thing is that in our culture, it's impossible to enforce standards on other people, which is just utter madness. Most of what we do with others. I am significantly more introverted than most people. I've frequently gone months alone in isolation, and it is sort of lonely, but it doesn't really bother me that much. I hiked 600 miles in the Appalachian Trail alone.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of the same. I like the company of people. My best memories have been with other people. You share a struggle with your brothers, with your friends, and you know, you have fun and enjoy life. But I've been alone so long. It's at some point you just kind of get like so used to it. It's like it's whatever. Like you don't even feel bad about it. But I know something must be done. Maybe this channel can help out. You know, want to create a little community with good men, normal men, that we help each other out. You know, hold each other a little accountable, and help each other out if we need help in any way. And you know, I will. You know, we need to pursue. I do believe I will set an example as well to others and myself. I need to become more physical in my pursuits with people, because I think a good way to do that is to just meet people through martial arts or something physical, bond through that. Because you can't, like, aren't you tired like me of all the like talk, all the speak? I want action. That is what I want. Yeah, you can, through fighting, you can get to know a man without talking too much. Because it's always like talk in today's society. Everything is talk, but nobody actually does anything. Nobody like puts in any effort. Everybody's in like this zombie mode, and it is very annoying um, to be around all these like autistic people who don't who pretty much like, in a way, they have no idea what they're talking about anything. About anything. They have so much pride, but they have so little knowledge and wisdom. It 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 actually like, it baffles me how these people operate, and it shows how little love they have received from others, from the world, from society. How little they were loved. They were never shown the truth, and the truth is love. These people were never checked. They were never loved. So I guess it is my job to love them, for us to love them, to show them the truth, to speak the truth. I say none of the things I say with malice or anything like that. I don't like evil people. I do believe that evil people need to be checked, but I think a lot of people are ignorant. They need to learn knowledge and wisdom, history and philosophy, to become better people, to follow God, believe in God, and not this like science bullshit that is just keeping them miserable. I don't understand. People keep fighting for things like it's all they have, and all they have is making them miserable, and they need to let go. I do believe a lot of people need to let go, like just accept God, the spirit, just the true idea of God. They need to just accept that, and they will be better. They will be less prideful. They will be less arrogant. People will enjoy their company more. They will have more friendships. Women will love them more. Like your entire life in every single way gets better. And yeah, I've thought of that, and yeah, people don't do what benefits them the most, which annoys me. Like, people don't think about actions and consequences, and what their actions are gonna lead to. If you are a bad human, you do bad things, people remember. If you spit on a person on the street, let's say a homeless man, you spit on a homeless man, if you're evil, if you spit on a homeless man and then that homeless man, he sees your face, he remembers your face. You know, in half a year, if you are in the same area, in the same location, and you suddenly, your heart stops. Let's say you're in the middle of the street at night, and the only person around, you guessed it, is the homeless guy. He sees you have a heart attack. Then what? You know, what if that homeless guy just doesn't care? He remembers you spit on him, and he just doesn't help you out. Now, this was a pretty extreme example I gave, but let's just imagine it is smaller. Let's say, like, somebody could help you, say, oh, your shoelace is untied, your tie is loose, or you have a little spot on your shirt, maybe you should go wash it. Normally people would say that, but if you've wronged them, if you have disrespected them or annoyed them or been an idiot, you won't get that help from them. That's why it is often just the best thing you can always do if you're unsure is just to be kind, just to be nice. If you're unsure in an unfamiliar place or with people, whatever, just be kind and don't try to offend and be an idiot, because he might come back to bite you. Just as the example I gave with the heart, your heart stopping. Like, don't create enemies. Don't create any like bad vibes about you, because it might. And sometimes, you know, I haven't even said it, but being kind, it can lead to gain, to financial gain, through social gain, through just gain in the world. If you operate correctly, if you stop being an idiot, if you start kind of just treating everybody with kindness, you can just gain from it. You will never. I don't know. I've never regretted being nice to somebody. Does that make sense? But anyway, I've yapped too long.
Alone when I was 8 bothered me that I'd gone months alone in isolation, and it is sort of lonely, but it doesn't really bother me that much. I hiked 600 miles in the Appalachian Trail alone when I was 18 for 2 months. When I moved to Texas, I had no friends for the first summer I was there, and I've been in France or other countries by myself for months straight. I can see that lots of people really struggle with this, though, where they need other people in their lives to be happy and healthy. That's why digital isolation in this era is so cruel, since most people are not hermit philosophers, but rather members of the human herd who really need connection to maintain sanity.
Yes, I do agree. Most people do need that connection. They do need that family, that community, that like group, like together we hunt, we take care of each other. They need that thing. Now, just like me and Rudyard, we can go a good while without it, without going absolutely mentally ill. But even I, we are meant to be with people. We truly, we are made for each other, man. That is what we are. And it's very sad what is happening now with the loneliness. I want to do something about it. Just anything. I don't know what I'm doing, but I know I have to do something.
Sanity and happiness. Members of the human herd who really need connection to maintain sanity and happiness. I find today that most people are just staggeringly lonely, and they're not interesting enough to offset it with personal introspective interests and hobbies. When I was growing up, my mother was obsessed with teaching me politeness. She said that I was the representative of my entire ancestral line and nation, and so if I was impolite, I was bringing dishonor on them. I didn't get it at the time, but now I do. 2. Politeness is the way to show others that you care about them, by doing little acts of kindness to demonstrate their shared humanity subconsciously. Heinlein once said he worried more about the loss of politeness than major wars, since it showed a population which no longer cared about others, a population which would collapse. One of the interesting debates in anthropology, which I've seen both sides of,
Yeah, I mean, examples of this is just like holding the door for someone, or yeah, just like general, just politeness, like, you know, returning the shopping cart, not throwing garbage in public, that kind of stuff. It just becomes more and more of it, like shopping carts everywhere. People don't hold the door for each other, like people don't care about each other, like everything becomes more and more of a rat race. That's why, like, the Mouse Utopia stuff is very interesting.
Is that some historians think the shift from the 19th to the 20th centuries was that of collectivism to individualism, and others think it's the opposite of individualism to collectivism. What the people who think that the 20th century was more collectivist than the 19th century point to is stuff like large government interventions, or large mega corporations, a moral code based off popularity rather than being right with God, or the mass mobilization of the individual into large organizations. And when you read books from the early 20th century, they refer to that era as the era of mass man, or the human whose identity was built around being part of a huge transcontinental network where everywhere in the world looks like everywhere else. At the same time, the other side of the argument is that in the shift from the 19th to the 20th centuries, you saw the rise of the individual's ability to be irresponsible, where back in the 19th century, the individual was given more agency in a world in which government and large authorities and the bureaucracy was weaker, but the individual was also held responsible. While in the 20th century, you saw the removal of things like abstract standards or codes of politeness or rigid religions, and what you're seeing here is the shift from a masculine form of individualism based around taking responsibility for yourself against the world, where 19th century liberalism was being protected against the state's overreach, while 20th century liberalism was the state protecting you from the consequences of your own actions through stuff like abortion or welfare, and that's feminine individualism. And in a lot of cultures, you saw the growth of individuality over the 20th century, with non-Western societies being one of the most prime examples. However, in my family, where I'm half Irish, half what I'd call cowboy American, I saw my ancestors of the 20th century lose lots of concepts of freedom and individualism, which they had held for centuries beforehand. And this just shows the world's a complicated place. If you're in a society where you can't enforce standards, politeness, or basic human decency, people will just stop having relationships and will psychologically break down. People seem to see themselves as isolated rational individuals, which most truly aren't. Through this lens, the post-1960s culture of just saying that we shouldn't have any standards for others and never judge others just comes across as madness and social suicide. It's hard not to realize how much the baby boomers, who still run society today, actually got behind this. What that really translates to is that civilization will just collapse. That since civilization is held together by countless little human ties of cooperation powered off love, which add up to national greatness. If your society isn't emotionally intelligent, it will collapse. The founders made America great since they understood that the nation is the aggregate of human individuals with their own wills, which are pushing their own self-interest. Thus, they built America so that each individual human would operate out of their own self-interest, which is just common sense if you know the human animal, and from there it would generate the most successful government in history. America is a far more humane and empathic government than communism or leftism, since the American liberal system thinks of the people involved as actual human beings with their own desires and dreams. What socialism really entails is the crushing of human aspirations under the managerial machine to turn them into cogs. Socialism is slavery to the state.
Yeah, these other ideas, like, this is what I'm, bro. this is what we came to realize. Like I came to realize is like all these like communism, all this stuff. They don't believe in the human heart. They don't believe in the human soul. And also like these leftists kind of, they don't believe in that shit. They just don't believe you're supposed to just be like this mindless zombie machine AI robot that just like does the bidding of the state, that kind of just works for nothing. You have no dreams, you have no goals, you have no visions, you have no dream. You don't have a soul. And these people don't understand this concept. They don't understand beauty. Like this is the thing. Like I've been starting to think about like a new concept, judging people by what they find beautiful. Does that make sense? If somebody looks at modern art and the abominations that come from it, and they say, wow, this is beautiful, and it's clearly a piece of art that is just a representation of mental illness. Some of these modern art pieces are just mental illness. And if they find that beautiful, then that is exactly what maybe, probably is in their mind. The mental illness is in their mind as well. That's why they find the mental ill pieces. If I hear if I ever hear somebody talk about the beauty in human nature, or just nature in general, you know, trees, rivers, all of that, they say that is beautiful. Kind of like the chaos and like the love everywhere. If they say that is beautiful, then I want to be their friend. Most definitely. I want to know these people.
State in a society to turn them into cogs. Socialism is slavery to the state in a society where no human has the space to breathe or dream. Part 2, empathy versus sympathy. There's an enormous disconnect on this topic every single time I cover it, and it stems from people not actually knowing what the word empathy even means. I find a lot of right-wing people have a visceral negative reaction against the word empathy, since they're confusing it with the word sympathy. I don't blame them, since enough people misuse the word empathy in this way, while most people learn language from real-world context and not from dictionaries, so they can't differentiate between when most people misuse a term and its actual meaning. Ironically here, the left actually has staggeringly low empathy, even though if you ask most right-wingers, they'd say the left is powered off empathy. That's since empathy is the ability to mentally model others. Sympathy, meanwhile, is feeling sorry for someone, which the left does a lot for the groups they decide to, while not for others at all.
Yeah, I mean, they have a lot of sympathy for a lot of groups, but not their own people. And yeah, empathy. This is a very interesting idea. I kind of thought about like I'm sounding like I don't want to like a lot of ideas this dude gives. I've thought about it before. Like I'm not some kind of like, I'm not trying to like be some kind of idiot, but like I've thought about it, but I just never worded it like this. But it's beautiful. I think it's beautiful. It makes sense. Yeah, I mean, if you can step into anybody's shoes and see things from everybody else's perspective, then you are smart. I do respect you. Then that means you probably have common sense. It means you're self-aware. That means you're just like a normal, cool guy. Like I wouldn't feel unsafe being around you. That makes sense. There's a lot of people I don't feel safe around. They just like weird me out. They creep me out. Legitimately. Just like creep me out. They have like these weird thoughts and weird political opinions. They just like creep me out. But I know if you're the type of man who can see things from other people's perspective, you know, then I just trust you more. It means you think more rational. You know, you're the type of guy like I don't have to like if I have kids, like I can just be safe around you. You're not some weirdo. And this is the problem in society now. There's too many weirdos. And I guess some people can see me as a weirdo, but you'll never, ever catch me doing some weird stuff. You'll never catch me do some weird shit. Like, like, I don't know. Can't really think of much on that.
For an example of a lot for the groups they decide to, well, not for others at all. For an example of the left having very poor empathy, they often horrifically model the minds of non-leftists, with the easiest examples being minorities or foreigners. This is a big reason why the left has exerted so much effort to help Black America, as I talked about in this recent video, which has utterly backfired in that Black Americans are vastly poorer, are more unequal against whites, have vastly more crime, drug usage, antisocial behaviors, and broken families, while having the highest fatherlessness rates ever in human history than Black America did under Jim Crow 60 years ago. What that means is that when the South had a social code legally, explicitly built to oppress blacks and keep them down, the effects were less disastrous than a system built to help the blacks. This means that the left has done a staggeringly poor job at modeling the minds and actions of genuine black people.
That's crazy. So, okay, that doesn't really surprise me, but still, like, hearing it, like, damn. So they had it kind of in certain aspects, they had it better back then than what they have now. Damn.
To have effective interventions. Keep in mind, most leftists live in northern cities without many black people, where Africans haven't hit a demographic tipping point, which you'd see in Philadelphia, Atlanta, Chicago, Memphis, or Compton. You can see this trend in other examples where the left clearly does see immigrants as endangered children who need the state's help to get going in the first world. That's just not true, where if you're Mexican or Algerian, you're probably psychologically a peasant who's used to living a pretty hard life, which in some ways makes you more mature than the average leftist, but at the same time not, and you're used to taking care of yourself. The left can't mentally model this sort of person, since they live in such a safe society that they can't imagine the mindset of a tough peasant who's built up grit and discipline from the hardship and cruelty. You know the left must be bad when I'm speaking more highly of third world peasants than them. I've read like 150 books in anthropology by this point, and probably the biggest issue with that field is that it's written nearly entirely by secular, progressive, educated professionals in major coastal cities. This type of person exists metaphorically thousands of miles away from what a normal historic human being would look like, or even someone from another continent around the world today. Anthropologists have literally invented the acronym WEIRD, in that most anthropological data sets come from Western populations, which are statistically super different from other groups. On top of this, I'm an educated religious Briton from Pennsylvania, which is anthropologically very close to that type of professor, and I still feel totally underrepresented by their worldview. Less than 1% of humanity fits into what's considered anthropologically normal. I like to say that if your vision of humanity doesn't start with India or Africa first, and then treats the West as a bizarre, albeit very successful aberration, you've done something wrong. Once you zoom out, you realize that for almost all of humans in history, or around the world today, things like religion, tradition, rituals, clan, tribe, history, and hierarchy were literally the most important things in their lives. They were things they would sacrifice their actual human lives as an individual to preserve. However, the modern left doesn't think they exist at all, and anyone who uses them is mentally ill or repressed. While by any metric you'd use from a normal society, the modern left is the one who is mentally ill and repressed. They're committing civilizational suicide, which is mentally ill, on top of repressing the entire human condition under social engineering. What social scientists do is treat even most Westerners as defective, which is literally true, in which the most important sociological text of the last century was The Authoritarian Personality, written by two Marxists who openly said they were very explicitly trying to take revenge for the Holocaust, wrote to say that social conservatism and hierarchy causes fascism and authoritarianism. The reality is the exact opposite, in that social traditions exist as a bulwark against totalitarianism, which only emerges in the vacuums left by the collapse of traditional religions or communities. It also completely ignores leftist or Marxist tyranny, which has killed twice as many people as right-wing tyranny. However, our entire society's model of the world is built off this false idea, which is why the left thinks killing tradition will stop fascism, while in fact causing the opposite. When progressive anthropologists project this imaginary
Yeah, I mean, if like this is what happens, man. It's people I guess everybody, people forget the lessons of the past, of history. Like humans have gone through a lot of this stuff before. We've gone through a lot of stuff before throughout history. And now people look at history with contempt. Like, oh, we're better. Oh, we're so much smarter. We have science now. Right? That is our new God. But the thing is, now we just have to relearn everything again. We need to relearn everything again. We need to fall down and die and die and die. So many have to die before humans they go back to the exact lessons we learned before. And it's crazy how people just don't notice. They just don't know that we've gone through a lot. Like, of course, you know, the Industrial Revolution and all of this like secularism garbage going on, it has created a lot of new modern problems, but there are actually a lot of similarities that you can see throughout history, that these cycles keep repeating. The game, it resets. It's the same. The rules, not a lot of the rules are changed. The like, bro, the thing is, communism and all these ideas, like, humans operate best in hierarchy, because that is for, I think society should be structured for like the stupidest person. Does that make sense? Like, it should be structured clearly, super clearly, for the stupidest person, because I have met the stupidest people, and you have to explain things in such detail that it made me feel smart, and I know how little I know. So it's like, you meet some of these people, and you really start to think about how to structure society, how it should be structured for people to operate normally and functionally. Because if you leave things up in the air, if you actually leave things up to the imagination, you are very generous to some people, because a lot of people don't have imagination. They don't have a voice in their head. They can't dream of beauty. They lack that. The brutal reality is they're kind of stupid, or yeah, just really stupid when it comes to things like that. I'm not saying they're stupid for like just existing, like they should like not be there. They're stupid, but I mean is like, you really can't like let them figure it out, because they never will. You need to structure society in such like basic, like autistic rules as possible. That's why religion back in the day was so cool, is because it gave people strict moral guidelines to follow that will set them on the path to fucking victory. But now people need to relearn that, maybe wronging people will come back to bite me. Maybe I should kind of just forgive and don't worry too much about idiots. Like, people need to start thinking about this stuff again. That's why I think religion needs to come back. Faith needs to come back. It does far more good than bad. So yeah, that's what I think, at least.
Person, which is a model for who they believe themselves to be as a sort of shallow self-image, it makes it impossible for them to understand anyone who thinks differently from them, which makes their efforts to change the world utterly backfire each time. When the neocons invaded the Middle East to install democracy, they couldn't even consider that the Muslims would see this as an invasion rather than liberation, and that these populations neither wanted democracy nor were mature enough for it. You should extend this across the entire world, which is why the managerial class fails. I was once talking to a managerial class track girl from Washington, D.C. about how I had such profound resentment about deindustrialization growing up in Pennsylvania, since it destroyed a lot of my prospects at social mobility and turned Philadelphia from one of the richest cities in the world to the poorest and most crime-filled of America's 10 largest cities. She said that the managerial class types saw working-class Americans as greedy for wanting to keep their own property and society at the expense of progress. That struck me as so insane, since we hadn't seen any progress ourselves, which was solely defined as the managerial elite's benefit. It's clear that the current elites, best encapsulated by the WEF, see the people of the West as cattle at best. This is what the consequences of what a staggering absence of empathy looks like. The absence of empathy has real-world implications on our...
Yeah, I mean, these are the most extremes. Or like, how do you say it? Like, do you, like, these are the types of people who just don't have a soul. Does that make sense? Like, a guy like me would never be on something like this. I wouldn't be allowed. We wouldn't be allowed. Because we're fucking human. We have souls. We understand how people operate. We can experience every emotion, every state of mind. We aren't broken. We aren't mentally ill. You know, you put me, you send me back 200 years, I would fit in. You send me back 100 years, I would fit in. I would figure it out. I'm not mentally ill. And yeah, it is insane how these people have so much power, even though they don't actually live the full human experience. They lack very vital, how do you say it, instruments in the mind. They lack like the skill to be humans, fully experience like the human experience, right?
Our lives. I'm really surprised I haven't made a video about this yet, but humans have different tiers of consciousness, and we've put a lot of work into studying this, with spiral dynamics being the dominant system. With each tier of consciousness, you can understand the world better, and you can see humans progressing through these over human history, in that it's obvious that our mental abilities have improved in most ways since the Middle Ages, even if we've lost wisdom or mindfulness in the process. Reality is complex and doesn't owe you simplicity. As an example of this, me and most of this show's audience probably exist at level 7, which is that of the Founding Fathers, where you see morality can be influenced by context. Level 7 can integrate religion, science, philosophy, and tradition, alternating between mental models for whichever one makes the most sense in that context. This is the level for strategic empathy, or the topic of this video. One of my goals is to get the right as a whole to level 7, which is what the West needs to survive. The left is at level 6, where they think everything is relative, where you can't judge others, while level 5 is trying to understand the world purely rationally, and level 4 is the traditional world religions, where reality is whatever the holy book says. A huge issue the left has is level 6 is unable to understand how they enable level 3s. Level 3 is a lot of the third world, where it can only see the world through their own self-interest, which you can see with the behavior of a lot of predatory Indians, Nigerians, or Russians online. Level 6 is so civilized and safe, they simply can't imagine that there are bad faith actors which exist at level 3, at least consciously, which don't understand the moral, albeit stupid points that level 6 is trying to make philosophically. The point I'm trying to make here is that the left has a lot of sympathy in that they feel sorry for a certain group, but they have very little empathy or the ability to actually understand how others think or perceive the world. The left has very little self-awareness, to an absolutely dangerous degree, in that they make a mental projection of the world and can't check if it's accurate. This is why they're killing the West, since they're so self-assured that this is the one correct course of action. No other course of action is moral, and they have no way to actually restabilize and check if their theory is even correct. This is a great flaw of modernity, stemming from our overuse of the left hemisphere. One of my favorite books ever is by the neuroscientist Ian McGilchrist, called The Master and His Emissary, which is the two neurological halves of the brain, in which the left hemisphere can only see the world through money, control, and power. It can't see change, flow over time, unstated things, implicit variables, context, meaning, or things like God. The left hemisphere is utter certainty in its answer, while being incorrect while the right hemisphere is humble. I love this symbol since it's so perfect, but the left hemisphere can literally only draw half of an image, while the right can draw the whole thing. The left hemisphere is the neurology used to control dead things, and the right living things. The Master and His Emissary explains so many of the issues with modernity. As an example, the left hemisphere can't distinguish between symbolic representations of something and the real thing. Its hemisphere can't distinguish between symbolic representations of something and the real thing itself. This is the core of the left's problem, where due to their feminine psychological bias, they see helping others as their core value. However, due to the fact that they're dominated by the left hemisphere neurologically, they create certain traits which they use as surrogates for helping people, like giving black people money. They never check if these surrogates actually help, or they actually do work effectively at helping black people, where they keep pushing this whether or not it actually succeeds. What empathy would entail rather than sympathy here is talking to black people, or looking at whether or not these policies worked statistically, determining what course of behavior would be best for the black community, and then carrying it out. Heidegger spoke to a tradition we've seen in most world religions, that there is a difference between doing and being. To be is to simply exist as your own soul and to live. To truly understand others, you need to be with them, which is empathy. You're not trying to exert control or force over them. In physics, we find that the way we perceive particles through trying to exert control over them actually changes their structure on an atomic basis. There's a huge difference when you're talking or dealing with someone, whether you are actually trying to understand others or if you're trying to manipulate them. You should try to exert force on others as little as possible, although sometimes it is necessary. What matters is that you perceive them as a person, where this speaks to a Christian attitude in war between just and unjust war, where it's just not feasible to not wage war. What pacifism does is it gives all the cards to the worst actors. I think war is just if you've thought it through and realized that this is the best outcome to treat others as humans. This is profoundly un-PC, but I think it's true, in that people like playing the game of life even when they lose, even if they don't want to admit it. People tend to respect you when you conquer them, but you still treat them as people. Nations which get conquered, like India with the British, Mexico with the Spanish, or Gaul with Rome, still have a lot of respect for their conqueror, even if they're too bashful to admit it, since in each case, the conqueror tailored that conquest to that region and eventually helped them improve. It's like how 70% of women at least have rape fantasies, where the difference for the woman is if the man raping them actually sees them as a person with profound desire. A lot of this stuff is just too un-PC to state in public, so I'll stop there. My attitude is we often...
Yeah, that's a explosive topic, but I've thought about it before too. It's like You hear this stuff, and it really changes how you view women. You're like, damn, that's what they. I mean, you just read the books, bro. Just read the books they read. You know, all this like 50 Shades of Grey, and there's many worse as well.
Have to do brutal things, but people respect you if you treat them as a human being, while they really hate it when you don't. The worst tyrants like the Mongols, Nazis, or Assyrians are remembered very poorly by history since they dehumanized the conquered. Part 3. Empathy as a weapon. Now that we've removed the incorrect connotations for empathy, let's look at the actual useful applications of empathy for things that my overwhelmingly young male audience would respect. Let's look at someone who had staggeringly high empathy, which you might not expect, that being the 19th century unifier of Germany, Otto von Bismarck, who was one of the greatest statesmen ever in European history. When you look at great leaders or statesmen, they always have a very good sense of psychology on both an individual or group level. Politics is an art and a highly messy thing, not like a science equation, and so it involves anti-fragile thinking and understanding things in edge cases, since the entirety of reality is an edge case. Every great historic statesman you respect needed to understand themselves enough to self-regulate in dangerous situations, how to motivate their own men, and how to deal with potential allies or enemies. The thing is that once you're a male beyond a certain level of status, you need to have empathy for your job because you're going to be managing people, and whenever you are dealing with or leading with people, you have to understand how they work, frequently better than they do because you are ultimately responsible for their fate and it's just their job to follow orders. This is why men in leadership positions require having empathy, and if they don't, it's a failing. When we look to Bismarck to see different examples of this, you can see several points in his career in which he demonstrated incredibly high empathy. For one, he was highly persuasive, often devolving into highly unorthodox tactics like bursting into tears and planning fits of rage threatening to resign to move the opinion of the Kaiser, the German legislatures, and other power brokers. He was a well-known womanizer, much like Kissinger, where they used their knowledge of psychology to get laid. He guided Germany towards becoming potentially the greatest power on Earth over the course of the second half of the 19th century. When Bismarck took power, Germany had been disunified for 600 years, in which Prussia had spent centuries already fighting countless brutal wars to secure a sort of dominance over northern Germany, even with a dozen other independent German states, which had Austria, not Prussia, as their suzerain. Europe at this point was tightly tied together by a complex web of alliances by powers vastly greater than Prussia, which had stopped earlier attempts to unify Germany, since that would create an enormous continental power. Earlier attempts to unify Germany, since that would create an enormous continental power. What Bismarck did so well was use this complex web for his own benefit, while taking each of the great powers, striking at their weakest point while using group or individual psychology to defeat his opponents. For example, he understood the yearning of the German people for unity and their fear of outsiders, which stemmed from centuries of being Europe's chessboard. He used the South German fear of France to unify Germany in the Franco-Prussian Wars, while using the Emperor of France, Napoleon III's ego and desire for empire against him to crush his enemies in a single masterstroke. He also started his career by using the Danish control of ethnic Germans in Schleswig-Holstein as a PR move to unify Germans and seize control of the strategic Kiel Canal, which gave Germany the connection between the Baltic to North Sea from Denmark. Carlyle said that the marker of a wise man is he who can see the innate character of things rather than their external trappings. This is profoundly valuable, since only those who can see the inner character of things are capable of actually relating to them on a deep level. I'm always shocked when I see people who lack wisdom and discernment, and I wonder how they're capable of living as functional adults, where how they make just basic choices in their life between choosing a mate, choosing their job, choosing how to live, and the other things you have to do as a functioning member of society. A life without wisdom is a life in a dark room with no no light, and instead of teaching wisdom, our society actively punishes it. What Bismarck was able to do was he could see the innate character of the thing he was dealing with, or he had very high empathy. As an example, when he beat the Austrian Empire, which had many advantages over Prussia in a lot of different ways, where it wasn't widely known that Prussia would win that war. Firstly, he isolated Austria from a lot of its European allies, which had protected it in earlier wars, and then had used the transition from the Prussian War with Denmark as a way to attack Austria. He realized that Austria was not a country which could mobilize men very quickly or fight quickly, thus ending the war in about a month. What he did with all of this was to secure the loyalty of the various German states under Prussia, not Austria like they had earlier. The point I'm trying to illustrate here is that empathy in our society is very feminine coded, but it's actually a profoundly masculine skill. One in which if you have an advantage, you can utterly crush your opponents in all facets of life. Since most interactions involve multiple humans, where this is a very valuable skill in a wide variety of industries. If you're an effective man, you really need to learn empathy in order to win. This doesn't even illustrate all the archetypes for how empathy can be effective as a man, where sales is a super easy example to show, or anything that's based around selling or understanding the market that you're trying to produce products for. For a more grandiose example, the founders of religions or leaders of political movements succeed, as Carlyle said, since they have a profound inner sincerity which allows them to see a deeper aspect of the human condition than most. Most people live very peripheral lives, but depth allows you to connect with others on a more profound level. If you pull it off well, tapping into something truly meaningful and profound, either in your era, culture, or broader humanity, you can become one of the greatest men who has ever lived, such as Buddha, Lenin, Plato, or Muhammad, just to name a few. It used to be there was a stable archetype of the sort of man society would cultivate to have wisdom. Until pretty recently, there was an ideal of the man of culture who was respected since he knew history, literature, philosophy, or art. We got rid of this type of man in our society, and as a result, the West collapsed since we lost all wisdom. This is the archetype for the original meaning of the word gentleman, where in old-style European cultures, classical or Chinese civilization to name a few, there was a type of man whose hands were gentle since he had the leisure to cultivate wisdom through learning and living the right life. It was supposed to be that his life itself was a reflection of his philosophy, pulling from the Greek tradition as one of the most obvious sources. In many cultures, this was seen as the highest form of masculinity. Without these, a society has no wisdom or discernment, which will then cause its extinction. We also removed the priest class who formed the same role in a different way. The role of priests in a society is to explain and help guide people on how to live. We tend to see the world in a very literalistic way, but the human condition has its own symbolic framework for how we live, which matters as much as literal material reality does. For our actual real lives, good and evil, higher and lower forms, or foolish and more brilliant are all real things which we have to interact with. Good and evil doesn't exist until you have an evil government on top of you. The priest class were trained to help guide the population through wisdom towards good ends. Removing the priest class in religion always causes civilization to die over history, as we can see with the fall of our society, 20th century Europe, and Greece or Rome. In 19th century philosophy, the higher man was one who could anticipate the end point of a chain of events and change the outcome through self-awareness. As the godlike power of our technology increases, we desperately need higher men, while at the same time, our society utterly demonizes this. I hate how our society's concept of masculinity utterly demonizes male sensitivity. That since male sensitivity and empathy is the foundation of all religion, philosophy, and the vast majority of art. It all stems from some man who's normally in his 20s, which noticed something others didn't by being curious about how someone else perceived the world. All good art requires at least one layer of empathy where you have to read the collective zeitgeist well enough to figure out what your audience would want. We hate sensitive men more than any other demographic in our society. Toxic femininity lashes out at anything that exists beyond its level of depth, which isn't hard since it has no depth. In this age which glorifies nihilism, mediocrity, and shallowness,
Yeah, like one thing that always annoyed me was this modern art garbage. I see it everywhere. There's places I can walk and there's like statues of like these abominations. And I don't know why they put it up. It's like they're gloating that you have to walk past this piece of shit every day. You have to walk past like a very bad looking statue of just some garbage, just some spaghetti modern art. And you know, I look at some paintings. I look at some paintings that were painted long ago, 150 years ago, 200 years ago, whatever it is. These paintings, you can tell the artist poured his heart out. It is such beautiful paintings, and the art is so beautiful. And yeah, you can really see the I guess the health of the people, the health of the artists through their work. I mean, right now we are in the mental illness era. All the modern art is mental illness. It is not beautiful, and they make it bad on purpose almost, just to, like, gloat, like, oh, art is in the eye of the beholder. No, it's not. It's not in the eye of the beholder. We can all agree on something is beautiful or something is ugly. So it's they're just clowning it. Like I just hate it. I don't like it. Art should be beautiful. It shouldn't be ugly. It should be beautiful. It should represent humanity, right? I'm not even an artist. I can't draw. I can't do paint. I can't do none of that. But I really like it, and I there needs to be a higher respect for it. There needs to be a higher standard for it, which there is none. You can just, you know, you can just poop and throw it on a painting, on a frame, and boom, you can call it modern art, and that's it. Like that's what it is, and it's very disappointing. The same with you know, modern, you know, philosophy and all these like smart people. I try to talk to them and they just like um I don't know, the script, it wears out, it thins out. Like they are backed into a wall where they have to think for themselves, and they never do. They just get angry and tell me to shut up, shut up, shut up. They scream, they yell this, shut up, shut up, shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. Shut up, shut up, shut up. I don't understand how these people, like, they have so much pride and arrogance. They cannot be smart. They cannot be wise. Yeah, I mean, we saw what he was talking about, the left and right brain, where basically most people are they're the left side, which is can only see half the picture. You know, you can see the, let's say, the external orange, but it cannot. Okay, let's just imagine a watermelon. The left brain can imagine a watermelon, but it cannot imagine the sweet, juicy, sweet red insides. Meanwhile, the right brain can, right? I mean, I would say I can use the right brain just fine. But I met a lot of people who just don't understand things. They just they just don't get it. They're not on that level, which we were talking about, like the consciousness levels or whatever they were called. I've definitely met people who were, it goes from zero, no, it goes from 1 to 10, and I just last month, like, I've met people who are most definitely at like level 4, level 3. I don't know what's the level where you can't understand banter or irony or sarcasm. I've met people like that. They were such NPCs. It I don't know what am I supposed to do. I just let them be. I just couldn't interact with them properly. Well, I could, but it was just, I had to limit myself. I had to operate on like 5%. Yeah, because everything I said, they took it seriously, and it was very very annoying. Yeah, I mean,
There's no place for a priest class, men of culture, genuine artists, gentlemen, real leadership, and anything like that. In our evil society, any degree of wisdom or self-awareness would show how evil and twisted things are. Our concept of masculinity is so broken that we've practically made being a man illegal in much of the West, while at the same time making a culture which openly demonizes and flagellates men. We think being
yeah, I mean, just try being a high testosterone man that just says it how it is. You know, these migrants, they do all the crime. Women, they need to, they need to be quiet. Like, you start saying stuff like that, then you're done. You're
man
it's over for you.
Either means openly a man illegal in much of the West, while at the same time making a culture which openly demonizes and flagellates men. We think being a man either means being a stupid lout who watches sports while eating unhealthy foods, or some gym...
Yeah. That kind of like bumbling fool that has been, portrayed in media. You have to like realize this. It's been trained into people. Of like you watch like TV shows like Friends or what other popular shows there are, and it's always the dumb man or the dumb father who can't do anything, and the woman always has to wear the pants and save him and be the number one in the household. They need to do everything. The man is just a bumbling idiot. They're stupid. Right, and it's such an insult to men and masculinity that is portrayed in these movies and TV shows, and that's just not reality. Like, women are not attracted to a loser who they need to do everything for. They need a capable man. They're attracted to a capable man. There's also hypergamy involved. You cannot, you can't be a loser, essentially. That's way more complex than that, but yeah.
Bro has being a stupid lout who watches sports while eating unhealthy foods, or some gym bro who hasn't cultivated any other aspect of himself. The culture of viewing masculinity purely through the gym or attractiveness to women would come across as profoundly low class and disgusting to every other society in history ever. Manhood is the ability to crush your enemies and take what you want, which becomes a lot easier when you have empathy. A point which I think a lot of people imply but isn't actually true is that people like to think that as your empathy increases, at the same time you lose your competitive effectiveness and you're not going to be willing to do difficult things that you might need to in order to survive. But what I've...
No, it's like, the thing is, once you kind of see everything from everybody else's perspective, it makes it easier. It's like you can just tell, like, okay, these people are low-key evil. I don't feel bad crushing them. It is what it is. I mean, nobody crushes anybody. But I mean, like, competitively, like, you don't care if you offend them or whatever. There will be little to no consequence once you get it.
Found is that as I increased my empathy and my sensitivity to my environment, and I became more self-aware of others' needs, I found that just being nice to everyone all the time wasn't actually good for people, and wasn't actually the moral way to act. Where the idea that you should be nice to everyone is a moral thing is actually a profoundly immature and weak idea, because there's lots of bad people where it's good for them if you defeat them. There's lots of inefficient organizations where you outcompeting them will force them to innovate. And people need to be given space, and they need to be given a certain Overton window to live their own lives, so you shouldn't constantly intervene into their lives to fix them. We need a new concept of masculinity, and I accept empathy as at least one pillar of it. This isn't to say that traditional masculine virtues like aggression and dominance aren't necessary. In fact, they're even more so if you're intelligent. The intelligent often use their brains to enable their own weakness, where the intelligence of a man must be matched by his strength and manhood. You must be strong enough to master your own mind, which can often become your greatest enemy if you're intelligent. The mind must always come second to your soul and your strength. Nature leaves no excuses for weakness. She crushes those who fall short, and this is an era of history where we will all be tested. However, there's also no fun in boring times. You get the fun times. You get to live in some insane, dystopian, fantasy sci-fi novel. A lot of it sucks, so be careful.
Yeah, I mean, we could have been, we could have been like peasant farmers and basically lived the same day till you died. There wouldn't be nothing. Maybe a traveler passed by once every 5 years. Like that would be the highlight of your year. Some traveler coming to visit you or something. I don't know. Or like it would be such a mundane and boring life. But yeah, there's always something new. Every day, some bombing or something crazy going on, and you just have to be vigilant and gain strength, gain wisdom, gain knowledge. Yeah, learn, go to the gym, but most importantly, don't be a coward. Go and fight. Like you need to learn martial arts. You need to do it all. You need to be capable in every single aspect. You can't just be a nerd who just sits and reads books all day. Yeah.
Careful to take the positives when they come. Part 4, Being. I have a rule called the law of chill vibes. It states that unless you're forced to, you should maintain chill vibes. I made it since so much of society was trying to force me to care about things I have no incentive to. I'm supposed to care about your politics, your products, some tragedy, or whatever, whenever the media tries to whip me into a hysteria. However, I just chose not to. You can just choose to not care about.
Yeah, that's like the superpower people forget they have. Is like you can't choose to just not care. Like they want to throw you into some kind of hysteria. They want you to buy some product or like to be distracted by some news or catastrophe or whatever. But like just relax, chill out, look around. Is everything burning? Is everything falling apart around you? No. Okay, then relax. Like, what are you stressing about? What are you crying and raising your voice for? What are you like? What's up? Like, what are you doing?
Any of this, do your own. However, I just chose not to. You can just choose to not care about any of this, do your own thing, and not the stupid and the cringe. This retarded system is only powered by us caring about it. If we don't, it falls apart, and so I won't. One of the things I've found is that in that I've lived a quite interesting life, but when all's said and done, I'm just vibing. What I mean by that is that even if you do a lot of cool stuff, you're just stuck living with yourself at the end of the day. You could be super rich, handsome, or attractive, but do you like being with yourself? Do you like the passive task of waking up, making coffee, and going to your job? You could have a really nice vacation and have a good car, but if the answer is no, then that's a real issue. In fact, it's your biggest issue. If you don't like being with yourself, then no matter where you are, you won't be happy. As a society, we have so many things, but we're clearly miserable since we're committing suicide as a civilization, and that's just not okay. Clearly we have to change, but it's clear that the loathing is internal, where we don't feel okay with being ourselves. This is a multifaceted problem with many causes that I don't have the time to get into here, but we need to learn to be human with.
Yeah, that's a big topic. One thing that annoys me is all the time people who like always checking up on you, like, oh, like what are you doing? Like what's your business? Everybody's in there in everybody else's business. Everybody cares about what everybody else thinks. It's like prioritize yourself. Like nobody cares about you, so you shouldn't really care about their opinions. You probably heard it before, but I mean, this world it crucified a perfect man. So it's like, don't try to appease people. The masculine man doesn't care, or like, I guess the top guy, the Chad or whatever you want to call him, the alpha man, that guy doesn't care. He just does what he wants, and he has the strength to do so. That is why you need to gain strength, because then you can do whatever you want. But be, you know, smart. Don't be an idiot. Don't do crimes. Like, I have to say it. It's insane that I have to say it, but like, don't do crimes. Don't be an idiot. Don't be, you know, be humble. Be kind. Um,
Other humans.
because like, you need strength to be kind. Like, people will always like try to press you, try to test you. This world will try to hurt you, but you need to be strong. That is the most important thing.
That can only stem from empathy, where we need to start having empathy for ourselves, and we also need to have empathy for others. I'm careful about giving blanket prescriptions, since I find that the advice that works for people varies a lot by their context, whether their personality, age, sex, ethnicity, or social class. For example, with something that's very obvious, men and women are motivated by very different things. However, this is a huge issue in this culture, where the one thing the industrial world can't offer people is humanity or the personal. I think a massive reason we have these issues as a culture is that for all of human history and what we evolved for, we lived in small communities with people that we knew. This meant that everything was tailored to us as an individual or our context. With the industrial world, that utterly died, where we could have everything we wanted, but not humanity.
Yeah, I mean, damn, it sounds like some kind of stupid movie quote, but we gained everything, but at what cost? Right? Now people are miserable. Now people don't want to be humans. They want to change genders. They want to become aliens. They want to become green and blue and everything. Like, people are mentally ill because we lost something very, very, very important, and most people can't put they sense it. I do believe a lot of people, they feel it. They go on a bus, they look at the other people, they walk down the street. There is something in the air. It's like dread when you look at all the brutalists, all the like brutal architecture, all these brutal bricks and concrete everywhere. You look at all these people with their miserable look in their eyes. It's kind of dead look in their eyes. Something is wrong. People can feel it, I do believe. And people just they can't put a finger on it. They don't know. They feel it because they're human. Deep down inside, they are human. They feel something is horrendously with society today, but most cannot. They don't see the bigger picture. They don't see why. Why is it? Why do people kind of like they wait for something? They wait for something, and everybody's just quiet about it. They wait for something better, and you know, it's I don't know, this like invisible dread, this like invisible, like dark gray cloud on society everywhere. And yeah, I do believe people notice, but nobody says it, or they feel it so little, or they're so used to it that it just comes as almost natural, but it's not. It's insane. Everybody has friends, but they're not friends. Does that make sense? They're not friends. They have a lot of friends, but they're not friends, right? They have a woman, but it's not their women, like their woman. Like the woman is not theirs. They have a girlfriend or wife, but it's just not there. Like, something is horrendously wrong, man.
Everything had to be mass-produced and have everything we wanted, but not humanity. Everything had to be mass-produced and commodified. The entire world became the same, where I love my story where I was on an island in the Indian Ocean in Thailand, which looked exactly like Florida. From studies, we found the most important thing for human happiness is connection. And I don't mean that in a peripheral sense, like going to the club with lots of hot people, or posting.
Yeah, there is a lot of things I would give up if I could choose to never gain certain riches or certain things or status or whatever, but I gained good connections with people, with friends, you know, with a woman, with my children, with my parents, like I would much rather take the connection, because like, bro, the rest of the stuff, it's just it's soulless. You know, it's just trinkets. It doesn't have, you know, flowing, it doesn't have veins, a beating heart. It doesn't have consciousness. I can't really play with it. I can't banter with it. I can't laugh with it. I can't love it. Right?
Nice stuff on Instagram where you have a lot of followers, but rather being connected or understood. As humans, we crave
Yeah.
others seeing us for who we truly are and being loved. This is why Christianity, a religion built off love, became the most successful religion in history, in which love is life's bonding particle, holding families, people, communities, or nations together.
Yeah, it always comes back to that. The thing is, what a lot of people they're driven by is hate, envy, envy, jealousy, hate, and like all these like bad emotions. But the thing is, they will never last. There's no bonding element there. Uh, people aren't will never become friends over hate, over envy, over like negative things. Like there has to be like positivity there, with love, with that is what bonding, that is what binds people together, right? So of course, in the end, um like all this like left and all of this like evil going on in people, that it will die out, because I mean, first of all, long term they won't reproduce. They're not human fully. They're like half human. Does that make sense?
This is a whole process, but in order to be comfortable with being, we'll have to be comfortable with existing and being with others. This process might be very painful, but not fixing it will be vastly worse, and we'll die as a society, since the birth rate is a function of this. Modernity is dying of a quiet nihilism and loneliness that's eating away at our soul, but we're too scared to admit it. Our entire society is dying since no one has the courage to not appear cool. It's so stupid. Trying to be cool isn't how you become cool. It's just cringe. It's so cringe that all the movies are about approval from others and not about goodness, glory, or honor, in which self-respect is infinitely higher or better than popularity. Self-awareness requires slowing your mind down. I meditate, go on long walks, and pray every day, for example, to do this. For other people, this might be attending church or reading a deeper topic.
Yeah, for me, it's you know, if you on the bus or whatever, listen to some music, or you just kind of like chill and relax, and you start to think. You know, that's why it's so sad with all these schools and everybody running around, everybody trying to do assignments for the teacher. Everybody has all these things going on. They never relax and think, take time for themselves. They always seek other people's approval when they need to. The number one relationship you should have is with yourself. You need to fix yourself. Um, always. You need to know yourself more than everybody else around you. Like, more, you need to know yourself more than your mother, more than your father, more than your friends. Like, you need to know every single aspect about you, your weaknesses. Like, figure it out. Don't try to, like, bro, don't you need to know everything about you, and yes, your strengths, your weaknesses. So until you kind of know a lot about you, you know, maybe seeking approval from other people or trying to be friends or whatever, it's kind of fruitless. It's a waste of time in a way. Like, just focus on yourself. Once you reach a certain level, you can do whatever you want. You're limitless. For me, it's like a switch. I can literally do anything I want. Anything. There's no negative, a defeatist mentality in me. And everything is for me, like, opportunities. It's outcome independence and abundance. Like, I in a way I win no matter what I do, because I go all out. I at least try to go all out. And yeah, I wish that for everybody. It's such a peaceful and calming state to be in. And it is like stressing out and like worrying. What are you worrying about? What are you stressing about? It's insane. Like, control yourself, master yourself, right?
Topics. My life exists to serve God, and yours doesn't have to, but you should at least be able to trust yourself, which most people can't. I will warn you, once you look inside yourself, you will find a person so different from who you thought you were that it will scare you, which is good. If you can scare yourself, then you're strong, and strength is the foundation of all virtues, since the weak man cannot have other morals. As you gain higher levels of self-awareness, your entire life will change. You will start to notice things you hadn't seen before, and what you will see will disturb you at first, but it will later become a total superpower. It will change your life in a very profound and positive way. Secondly, as you do this, you will start to notice details about others you hadn't before. This might result in you shedding relationships, but that's okay, in that suffering is the burning away of weakness. As you face suffering, you need to remember that you can always trust yourself. Lots of people struggle with boundaries, but once you can return to yourself and know that you're always safe whenever you're alone, you will learn to not overly rely on others. You might want love or affection, but you have to return the energy others give you and not project what you want to see onto them. Follow the process, which is the best thing you can do. At the core of you is your soul and will, descending ultimately from the divine, whether or not you can believe it yet. Your identity isn't what you've done for work, how much money you make, what you watch on TV, what you wear, or anything like that. It's the little iron bar that already resides in your soul. When you've given up on it, you've given up on life, even if you're still walking. I carry a little iron bar to remind myself of everything I've lived through, to say that I'm trying my best and that's okay. If I fail, hey, it's okay, it's a work of progress, but aren't we all? 3 years.
Great video. I really like this one. It's beautiful. Anyway, boys, I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I catch you boys on the next one. Take care of yourself.